Boss Talk. My name is Jim Parker, and this is my business partner, Carey Sobel.
And today's episode is, when is the right time to sell my business? It's a common question that we get from just about every single seller or anybody inquiring about selling their business. And timing in business is everything. And it's no different when you're actually trying to sell your business. Timing could be the difference of you walking away with financial freedom, or it could be you walking away disappointed. And I think that there's no necessarily universal answer as to when is the right time, but there are certainly patterns and there are certainly indicators on when could be the right time.
And things to think about.
Absolutely.
This is a great topic. I'm so glad you picked this, Carey.
It's a fun
I love
one.
this topic.
And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent if that's okay with you.
Yeah, Carey, I want to hear it.
All right. So I recently received my CEPA, Certified Exit Planning Advisor
Congratulations.
designation.
You deserve
Thank
it.
you. And the basic thesis of it is that exit planning is good business strategy, meaning it's something that should be done as a part of your entire strategy for your business, not when you decide I want to sell, I'm going to start exit planning.
Mm-hmm.
It's really something that happens, from the very beginning all the way into the very end. And I think my favorite concept about CEPA's program, which is a designation from the Exit Planning Institute, is they talk about the three legs of the stool. And they compartmentalize the entire exit planning process, or a part of it, into three different concepts. One is the personal readiness, which is tied more to your emotional part of selling. And are you ready to sell? What are you going to do after? It is personal financials. So your personal financial aspect,
Yep.
Are you financially prepared to sell your business? How much of your wealth is outside of your business? And the third part is the actual business's attractiveness. Is the business ready? Is it something that a third party will want to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if those are the three legs of the stool, and that is exit planning, how do we relate timing on when to sell your business to those three things? Okay. So the first is going to be personal readiness. Let's talk about patterns related to personal readiness on when you know it's the time to sell. I'll go first.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. How about burnout? If there's a pattern of repetitive burnout, it is an indicator that maybe you should think about it being the right time to sell.
Carey, I mean, I think you hit that really right on the head, because a lot of times business owners are approaching me and they're already like completely burned out. Their numbers are starting to drop. Or sometimes we list the business for sale. This happens this happened a couple times in the last couple of years. List the business for sale and they just mentally check out.
Yeah.
And you want to get that strongest price, get the best terms for your business. You got to have your mind in the game and keep pushing that business forward. I agree. Burnout is a big, big problem.
And sort of related to it, just on the emotional side, is loss of passion.
Yeah.
I personally went through this myself when I sold my business a couple of years ago. I was not passionate about being in the business anymore. Fortunately, it was an internal transition as opposed to going outside to another party. But the personal aspect of burnout or losing your passion or something changing about your ability to go day to day, it's going to erode the value of the business if you're not all in, right?
Exactly. It's not just eroding the value and you're not going to get as much for the business, but think what you're doing to your employees too. Your employees they can see it.
Yeah.
A lot of times the customers may or may not see it, but you got to know when you start seeing those initial signs of burnout. Hey, I got to start getting myself in the position to exit the business.
And related to burnout is, a critical part of facilitating a business transfer is the seller being able to properly and adequately transition the buyer. So if your energy is not there and you don't have the energy to do a transition, you're not doing yourself a service, you're not doing the buyer a service, certainly, but the health of the business, the employees, you got to be able to give it your all to pass the torch. And if you're already checked out, it might be a little too late.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we're talking burnout, I think this is an important thing, because what I've seen in the last few years, we're talking about burnout, like, just over it. Don't want to go into the office anymore or go into the business anymore. Or, I just don't have the fire under me and then numbers are dropping, et cetera, et cetera. But an interesting thing that I've been seeing in the last 4 or 5 years, because we're dealing with more people now that are exiting because they're retiring.
Yeah.
And I think this is really interesting. And I don't consider this burnout, but it's a good thing to mention because I see it all the time, is these business owners that I talk to, you look at their numbers and their numbers are almost the same maybe they go up a little bit, but they're almost the same for the last 4 or 5 years. And you talk to them about it, and they're like, I spent 20, 25 years building my business up, growing it. Da,
Yeah.
da, da. And I got to this point where I'm making really good money and I'm happy. I'm just happy where the business is. And I didn't want to go through that growing pain again. Because every time as a business owner, you grow,
Mhm.
you're investing money, you're investing time, you're bringing on more employees, you're bringing on more headaches. And it's just very interesting. You get those business owners that are usually like late 50s, early 60s that are like, or mid 60s, and they're like, yeah, it's just been on autopilot. And I don't think that's burnout, but I think that
Is it
you need
complacency?
it is complacency. And I think at that time they need to start thinking, yeah, I'm going to eventually be getting to the burnout stage.
Yeah.
That's probably the first indication. They could probably run it for a few years like that, but it's the first indication. Yeah, I'm going to probably start getting burned out. They're starting to get more focused on other things in their life. Wife is a lot of times is already retired. They've got grandkids. They're
Mhm.
traveling more, and they start to. And I think it's good. I think it's healthy. They're ready for the next stage of their life, and that's important.
Yeah.
But that you got to realize, okay, yeah, my focus is starting to go somewhere else. It's eventually going to start hurting the business, and you want to sell it before it starts hurting the business, and it starts hurting your employees.
Yep. And so that personal aspect, that personal readiness, those emotional triggers that we're talking about are good indicators of thinking about when the time might be to sell. So that also relates to the three legs of the stool that I mentioned. So the second leg of the stool, which is financial readiness and how it relates to, we were talking about trends and patterns. How about this? I heard this somewhere and I think it's great. You may be ready to sell your business when your business's financial aspect is gravy and it's no longer your oxygen.
Right. I
If it's
love
your
it.
gravy and not your oxygen. So if you don't necessarily need the income coming in from your business to retire, you're probably financially set. You've met with your financial advisor. You could retire. This is the cherry on top. This is the gravy, right? So that's one indicator of just there's enough money in the bucket for you to retire because you've done the homework and due diligence with a financial advisor to say, this is the quality of life I'd like. This is the amount of money I'm going to need. And I have now reached that goal
Mhm.
and I don't need this anymore, which is probably one of the reasons why you see that complacency in people, flat for a little while. They go, I'm making X amount of dollars a year. I can live off of this. I've saved enough. I
I'm not
don't,
busting my butt that
yeah,
much anymore.
I don't need more.
Right.
So, and a lot of people just at that point, they go, okay, well, I'm just going to keep doing this until what? Until the business deteriorates.
Yeah. Yep.
So aside from having enough money, it's a diversification is a big part, right? They say that 80% of most business owners' wealth is locked up in their business, right? 80% of their entire net worth is locked up in their business. So when they unlock the business, is that enough? Do you have any other eggs in your basket besides just your business? Because if not, it's a problem. You need to start diversifying your revenue streams beyond just what you do in the day to day. So
You do, Carey, because you never know. You never know what could happen
Yeah.
either. My first business, we had a very successful business. We had an office in here in Orlando. We had one in Las Vegas. We had one in Hawaii, and we were doing very, very well. Out of the blue, September 11th happened.
Mm.
September 12th came by. Our fax machine, this is back in the day of fax machines. Fax machine rang off the hook. Canceled order, canceled order. You couldn't call up the clients and say, we'll give you better terms, we'll give you a better price, we'll do this for you. It was gone. Our business was evaporated overnight because of September 11th. That's beyond our
Mhm.
control. That's
Mhm.
beyond, you never know what could happen in the world.
That's why
And
exit
there's a
plan-
lot of weird stuff going on in the world right now.
Yeah, there is. I had a great conversation on the way in here about that. But nonetheless, I mean, exit planning being good business strategy, there's a perfect example of it. Most people, when they write a business plan, if they even write a business plan, do they have a exit plan in it? Do they have a contingency plan in it?
Mhm.
When you start making good money is not when you should just sit back and be like, this is great. No, that's when you actually start planning your exit,
Right.
even if it's 10 years down the road. So
Well, let me interrupt you real quick, Carey. You're in a situation at that point. You're making really good money. You made the conscious decision that you are happy with where you're at. You're making good money, and you're not busting your butt anymore. And the reason you'd want to go to the next level because the investment in time and money and energy and headaches that are going to be involved with that. And when you get to that point, you're at a point that I lost my train of thought. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, Carey.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me keep
It'll
moving
come
then.
back to me. I know it will.
Let me keep moving then.
Yes, go ahead.
So we talked about two aspects: personal readiness, financial readiness, and how they relate to indicators and patterns. The third part is the business attractiveness, the business readiness. So I'll tell you, I think, in my opinion, what is the highest indicator of a business getting ready to sell, of a pattern, is 3 successful years of top line and bottom line growth.
Mhm.
If you have 3 successful years of top line and bottom line growth and you have clean, organized financials, from a buyer's perspective, that's probably the number one thing they want to see in that business, is a business's growth and trajectory going positively. There's 100 other aspects about a business's attractiveness, but people want to buy a good revenue stream of cash flow coming in with a good trajectory. So if you have 3 years of growth on the top and bottom line of your business, is that not a good pattern to say, this might be a good time to sell?
I think that's an excellent time. And you know, Carey, it came to my mind, and this
Yeah.
is going to kind of take a flip coin on that. I just remembered what I was going to say is that, you know, you get to that point where you're making good money and you're not busting your butt anymore. That becomes very attractive to a buyer because they're
Mhm.
looking at it. You've kind of modeled it. You've got the employees around you. You've got the systems in place. Things are kind of clicking. You're making good money and you're not busting your butt anymore. You know, that becomes very attractive to a buyer. And a buyer looks at that and says, hey, you know, I can buy this business. I'm not going to be busting my butt and I'll have extra time to grow it and
Mhm.
do take it to that next
Yeah.
level. So I think either one of those situations where, you know, you're seeing that projection going up and up and up every year, the buyer's looking at it and going, how far can it go up?
Yeah.
And the flip side of that, if you've got a business the last couple of years that you're just making good money, you know, that's going to be, and you're not busting your butt anymore. That's going to be a very attractive to a buyer.
Yeah.
But on the second one, you have to worry about
That
that
decline.
burnout. That's the first sign of a burnout.
Yeah.
Truly believe that.
I think if you see multiple years of still a healthy seller's discretionary earnings or EBITDA number, and the seller's like, yeah, I only work X amount of time, or yeah, there's other contracts out there, I'm just not going after them. There's just
Yeah.
that's an opportunity for the
Right,
buyer, right?
right.
So I don't think that's necessarily well, it is. Let me retract that. It is an indicator for a seller to say this might be the right time to sell, but they're typically not thinking that way.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
If they're like, yeah, my business is kind of flat, maybe I should sell it. No, that's not the way the train of thought works.
Yeah.
But you know, it's conversations like this where we're talking to you, our audience, who is hopefully, you know, business owners that are thinking about selling. We're just trying to tell you some of the ideas that should just have that light bulb go off on, should I start exit planning? You should always start exit planning. There's never a right time to start the process, but it is certainly a wrong time to start the process.
I agree with you. I think that your business, no matter if you're, you know, 65 years old or if you're 35 years old, your business should always be in a position to sell. You
Mhm.
never, I mean, how many times, Carey, you talk to a business owner and they're like, I'm never going to sell. I'm never going to sell. And then 6 months later, a year later, something happens either positively or negatively that impacts their life and they have to sell. And if you're not set up, if your business is not set up to be sellable, you could be in a really bad situation. I have to sell and, you know, I can't.
Yeah, and skipping to forward to a point I have on here is the dangers of waiting too long. Let's talk about some of the things that come from that, right? So the first thing that comes up based on what you were just saying is when you are forced to sell.
Mhm.
Typically that's health.
Yeah.
We see that unfortunately too often of somebody that
Or
was
a
waiting
death
or waiting,
or-
waiting. There's
yeah.
death, an actual death or a health issue leading towards it. So of course the danger of waiting to sell is if you're not in a position, if you're not thinking you're in the position to sell and then something happens, you know, a lot of that can't be forecasted. But
Well, we gotta be positive too. It could be a fantastic opportunity just lands in your lap
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
well, I was going to say that you want to be on the offense, not the defense when you're selling. That's
Right.
really what it comes down to. If you're on the defense, it's because you are backed into having to sell because of divorce. You're backed into having to sell because of a death. You're backed into having to sell because you got a bad health diagnosis. You're backed in because some other activity or something happened in your life that's going to pull you away from your business. You will not be able to have the same focus on your business for whatever reason it
Mhm.
may be. And now you're playing defense instead of offense. If you start playing offense, you're going to have a better outcome.
I agree
There's
with you
no-
1000%.
I don't see a situation where if you're playing defense instead of offense, where you will have a better outcome than if you're playing offense versus defense.
Yep.
But waiting too long. And you know, I have an example of this one later that I wanted to talk about, but let's do it now. How about a seller that says, I'm just going to wait until I hit that certain benchmark of revenue or hit that certain EBITDA number. I'm going to wait a couple years until I hit that to sell. I just think that it's such a risky thing to do. I understand the concept of if I get to here, maybe I can move my multiplier. What are all the things that can happen in between that time? You know, your situation with something that happened on September 11th, COVID-19, when COVID happened, there's so many things that it's like, if I just get to this, then I'll get to this. That's typically when somebody ends up playing defense. So, another point I wanted to bring up, we were talking about the 3 legs of the stool and how they relate to patterns or indicators. I think probably one of the hardest things to predict, and in the same sense, one of the biggest indicators related to the right time to sell your business is market cycles. And when we're talking market cycles, it could be economic, it could be political, it could be environmental. There's so many different things involved in that. So maybe let's discuss a couple of them. I don't want to necessarily go into right now, but let's talk about the economy over the past couple of years. What's the biggest thing that's happened in the economy that has affected business sales?
No, I think inflation has had the biggest effect on businesses.
I was going to go a different route, but I like that. Let's talk about inflation. So I think most business owners I'm talking to right now, unfortunately, are talking about how numbers are flat or numbers are down, right? We could probably attribute that to
maybe profit margins are flat or down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if demand is still there, margins being cut. I have a distribution company that I'm selling right now, and sales are going up, profits going down, COGS are going up, their cost of sales, the margins, tariffs, inflation, all of those things related to cost.
I mean, think about the situation though. You know, you got in the business, you know, inflation is going up. So, you know, you have to pay the employees more. You know, the living wages right now are higher than they've ever been. And, you know, I guess every year it increases, but it's gotten really bad in the last few years.
Yeah.
So labor costs are going up. Your supplies are going up. You know, all your expenses across the board are going up. Your CPA is probably raising your fees, your pest control, whatever you have as far as expenses are going up. And then on the flip side of that, that's what's happening to businesses and consumers as well. You know, they're struggling. So now
you can't raise the prices.
You're paying higher costs, but you're also losing demand, or you can't charge a higher cost. So you're kind of in that situation right now as a business owner. You have to be very careful.
Man, I wasn't even putting my head towards inflation, but that could not be more true. I was going directly towards interest rates. And today, or I think yesterday, actually, I think the Fed cut the rates. But prior to that, it has drastically impacted 2 things. One, the ability to take on certain amounts of debt when it's a math equation. If the interest rates are higher, you're paying more in debt service, and the numbers may not pencil out to where a deal can underwrite. Right. I mean, it's just like the ability for a buyer to get financing has been significantly harder because the deals don't pencil out. Yeah. So if interest rate environments are higher, you're typically not able to get this same multiplier of EBITDA or SDE, right? Because the debt service doesn't allow it.
Yeah, I mean, look at it right now. The SBA loans are around 10 and a quarter. Like you said, they dropped a quarter of a point the other day. So it's going to come down a little bit, but, you know, say around 10%. Yeah. You know, interest rate, that's a pretty hefty interest rate.
Yeah.
And what you said is absolutely true. Like, you know, you got that, the business is worth $2 million, let's say. The buyer's coming in and they now may not have the buying power that they did a couple years ago to buy the $2 million business by the time they do the debt service on the loan. So that it definitely affects the value of the business.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because when you think about what is a indicator, again, the topic of this is when is the right time to sell? So if interest rates are high, should you sell? Well, I mean, it shouldn't be a reason why you wouldn't try to sell, but it's absolutely going to change the buyer pool.
I think that's what you said is a critical thing, Carey. Like, I think it's good for business owners to understand that interest rates do affect things. But right now, also, we're sitting in an environment where there is a lot of buyers out there, a lot of good quality buyers. I'm going to tell you, I've been selling businesses for nearly 25 years. I think the last 5 years or so, I have never seen so many buyers, qualified buyers out there to buy businesses. I actually think that there is probably more qualified buyers out there right now than there is good quality businesses that are priced
100%.
Priced right. It is a seller's market.
Yeah.
I think it's important for the business owner to know, yeah, the interest rates are going to indirectly affect the buying power of a buyer to buy their business. However, what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm going to wait for interest rates to drop
Yeah.
before I
No.
sell,"
Mm-mm.
you know, because I'm burned out, but I'm going to wait, or I really want to retire, but I'm going to wait. It's much better to get out immediately. And I do want to say this: I don't want the viewers to be watching this video and going, "Oh, they're business brokers. They're just trying to convince us to sell." That's not the case. It's more of, I have seen too many instances where business owners are coming too late,
Yeah.
calling us too late.
Yep.
And that's what eats me up.
Yep.
You know, and it's more like, hey, this is what we see as business brokers in the real world when it comes to selling a business. Don't put yourself in the same position as those people.
Mhm.
I gotta tell you, one was, I remember, it was many years ago. I met with this gentleman. He was like in his 70s, and I met with him, and he goes, "Jim, I don't have very much money saved up for retirement. I need the sale of this business is going to be for my retirement." I had to come back after he gave me the financials. I had to tell him it's not sellable. You know how hard it is to sell somebody in the 70s that is looking to sell their business to retire? I can't sell it. And there's nobody out there. A business broker will probably list your business, but it's unsellable.
Yeah, the hardest thing for us to do in our job, I believe, is when we tell
Yeah.
somebody what their business is actually worth and what they think it's worth. It makes it that much more heart-wrenching when somebody who's at that, late stages of their life, it's actually unsellable, not necessarily just not meeting the number that they need for retirement. It's the hardest part of what we do.
It is. And I gotta tell you, this is what really kind of irks me too. And look, I mean, I'm not picking on people. I think that we have a wonderful industry. I think most of the people in our industry are fantastic business brokers. They're really good. They really care. But you do have the sliver of people out there, and they're not necessarily bad people, and they're not necessarily bad brokers. But the attitude is of list everything and anything, play the numbers game. A certain percentage is going to sell. Hey, if that business owner wants to take their business to the market at an obnoxious price, go ahead. We'll just beat them down on price every month for the next 6 months. It's just not. It's just, for me, not the way to do business. I mean, you're playing with the seller's emotions. Like in the case we're talking about retirement, these business owners are thinking about retiring. They want to retire, and then they have a business broker coming along going, "Yeah, well, let's list your business for sale. Let's take it to the market, even though it's not ready to sell, or let's take it to the market, even though it's way overpriced." You're hurting the ability of that business selling, and they're probably going to end up getting less money for the business and worse terms for that business if they would have just waited, put everything correct, did everything, kind of set it up for sale and had a realistic asking price.
Mhm.
And that I don't want to get into the whole wave theory, but we've talked about the wave theory
Yeah.
on this program a million times, that
Yeah.
when you go to the market with a realistic price for a good business and it's handled properly and correctly, the buyers out there are like, "Whew."
Yeah, they
But
swarm in.
They swarm, and you go to the market with an overpriced business, and you sit there, and your broker's telling you every month, "Oh, drop the price, drop the price." And you eventually start dropping that price, and it keeps going down and down and down.
Businesses
Eventually, you
devalue.
get that one buyer that comes along. You haven't had a serious buyer in 6 months, and they want to negotiate. I don't care how good of a negotiator you are. You have no leverage.
Zero.
I'd rather be in the situation. You got a good business that's been set up. The exit planning's been done. The thought behind it has been done. Going to the market with a reasonable asking price. Everything's being handled correctly. And all those buyers are swarming around it. That's how you maximize your sales price. That's how you get the best terms possible.
And the later you start, the harder that is.
It is.
So just a couple more points on market cycles related to when's the right time to sell a business. So market cycles continuing on, related on economic. We talked about interest rates. We talked about financing availability. I think economic optimism or economic pessimism has an impact. And right now, I would say we're probably maybe pessimistic. I feel like it's shifting.
Sure. We don't
it's
know
shifting.
what's going on.
It's shifting back and forth. We
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. But one thing that we do know is that the private equity buyers are still out there. Quite a bit
in
of
full
them
force.
in full force.
I read a statistic the other day, by the way.
What's that?
Between 400, the growth in private equity in the last 25 years is between 400 and 800%.
I believe it.
Isn't
I
that
see
crazy?
it. I see. I get 4 to 5 introductions on a weekly basis of a new private equity firm, whether they're actually a PE group or whether it's just an individual that's acting as one with their charter, right? I'm looking for a business between $2 and $5 million in EBITDA. I'm looking for this geography and I'm looking for these industries. I get it literally 4 to 5 times a week of those email intros.
And the individual buyers, they're out in full force too.
They are. And the cycles of them, of these, I'm going to just focus on PEs, strategic buyers. They're cyclical. Sometimes they're aggressive. Sometimes they're pulling back. There's more and more of them out there, but you can literally see, like right now, I'm seeing a little less activity than I have. But here's one thing when it relates to market cycles. There are some hot industries that go bonkers.
Oh my!
What's one of them right now?
Oh, I think fertilization businesses I think that's one of the hottest industries out there right now. There's so many private equity groups that want to go out there and buy fertilization.
I was not thinking that. Give me another one.
HVAC.
HVAC. That's the one I thought you were going to go with.
Yeah. Well, I saw a lot of fertilization business, so that's the one that came to my head. But HVAC is really big. I think roofing is really hot right now. I think a lot of the home services
they are
the hot. If you kind of boil it down, we just mentioned 3 and they're all fall in that home service category.
Home services was where I was going to go with that example. And I think that, it's funny. I had a buddy that owns a roofing company that reached out to me recently and he was like, hey, did I miss the wave? I saw a lot of roofing companies get some great multiples. I'm like, I don't know whether you missed it or not, but I think you should start considering it. You should have been considering it for a while because we know that the multipliers that we're being paid for in 22, 23 were insane.
Yeah.
Okay. We're in 25. They've died down a little bit. So did you miss it? Maybe, maybe not. There is more of a picture to it than this roofing company got this multiplier. So am I going to get this? There are hundreds of little aspects of each business that's making a difference. So I couldn't say, yes, you missed it. No, you didn't miss it. But yes, you should have already started this process, So I think when there is a market cycle related to industry, if you have done proper exit planning prior to it and you're just ready to pull the trigger, right? If I'm a business owner now, as opposed to a business owner before where I've been in this space for 13, 14 years. When I started my business, I'd almost immediately start the prep for it. I would make sure every single month I'm keeping track of what are my margins, what's my SDE, what's my EBITDA, how involved am I in the business, what's repeatable, things that we're going to talk about later on. But we know that because we prepare business owners to sell, and we know what to analyze on what's sellable versus what's not sellable. What harm does it take for all business owners to sit down with an exit planning advisor or with a broker and take a snapshot of the business and find out what the hell makes this business more valuable or less valuable? What makes this easier to sell or harder to sell? There is no business owner out there right now that should not consider doing that.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go, I know you said exit planner, but I really think they need to be talking to a business broker because I think that, you're a different situation. You got your SEPA, but you also been a business broker for years. This is what you do. I think that, just an exit planner or, somebody that's a financial planner, they might know textbook stuff of how things should be. We're seeing it day in and day out, and other people like us that are, good quality business brokers, they're seeing it day in and day out.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between seeing it, being hands-on with it, than reading about it.
No doubt. And, when I went through that SEPA program, and I think there's a couple other, a handful at least of quality business brokers in M&A, and I won't name any people, but people in our circle that are part of our same organizations that are also SEPAs. And
really, some really good quality people too. Quality brokers.
And I think the brokers that have that SEPA, it's advantageous because typically, if a SEPA is not a broker, the first advisor, one of the first advisors that they're bringing to the table because they act as quarterback, is the business broker, is the M&A advisor, right? So I think that if they have valuation background and they could at least tell the business owner what they think it's worth, they better be checking with a broker or an M&A advisor if they don't have their pulse on it like we do. So, but really it's just whether it's a exit planning advisor, a financial advisor, just your accountant or a business broker, anybody, start the damn process.
And I'll tell you, I agree with you. Start the damn process. And I'm going to tell you how I approach it as a business broker. I love it when a business owner calls me up and goes, hey, I'm X years old. I'm 62 years old. I want to retire by the time I'm 65. I want to sell my business. I want to get the conversation going. And a lot of times they feel like I like it because they're being honest up front, and they're telling me, hey, I'm not ready to sell yet. Just kind of putting the feelers out there. And I can tell in the tone of their voice that they might be like, kind of like they don't want to waste my time. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I love it. I'm glad you called me
Yep.
because a few things. One, I'll do a broker's opinion of value for you. Tell you what the most probable selling price of your business is. Because you know how it is. Most business owners think their business is worth more than it really is. And you're trying to plan your retirement. Don't wait until you're ready to retire and you got this number in your head that wherever it came from. And then you call up and you find out, the business is going to sell for
Yeah.
anywhere near that. So, that way, hey, here's the broker's opinion of value. If you sold it today, this is how much you could get for it. So now they can start planning. Okay, I need to own my business for X amount more years. Maybe I have to own it for an extra year, or maybe, it's more than I thought it was. And maybe I can get out a year earlier, or they can look at it and go, hey, I'm going to need a little bit more. Maybe I need to, grow that business a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But the other aspect to it, just as important as coming up with that most probable selling price, is looking at the holes in the business.
Yes.
Every day.
Yep.
I'm talking to buyers. I know what they like. I know what they don't like, and asking the seller those questions like, okay, hey, your client concentration is too high. You're going to have to fix that. Oh, you got too many partners in the business working full time. There's going to be a big brain drain. Whatever it might be, it's having those conversations so that over the next couple of years, they can start positioning the business to be in a better position to sell. And probably the number one thing out there is that we talk about to these business owners is stop running all your personal expenses through the business.
Yeah.
Get your financials clean, because you're not going to recoup those monies you're not going to recoup those monies. So stop right now, just do that immediately.
Yep.
If you're thinking about selling it, do it anyways. But especially if you're going to sell in the next couple of years, stop all those personal expenses going through the business. And for God's sakes, report your cash.
Report your cash. So a couple things to what you just said. One, the next topic that we actually talk about on our next episode is about identifying those holes. And I think it's one of my favorite parts about what we do. Most of the things are very logical, but we just see them over and over. And somebody who is in their business is not thinking about that. So I'm excited for that. And I agree with you. It's when somebody calls up, and I had this conversation, a week ago. A guy owns a great marine construction business. And he called me up and he was like, listen, I was almost forced into taking this call with you. I'm not ready to sell. So it's no problem.
Yeah.
I don't care when you're ready to sell. My job is to educate you on the process. My job is to tell you where you're at today. And if it's very far away from where you need to go, not only will I help tell you how to get there, but I'm willing to work with you along the way. Will you want to touch base with me quarterly, semi-annually, monthly?
And we don't charge for that.
No, we should.
And no, we don't charge for that. And there's no obligation for them to use our services moving forward. I mean, at the end of the day, I hope they will. And they do, because you build that rapport and that relationship and things like that.
It's just, we're not,
they don't have to.
We're not a quick hit, salesman. We are literally a professional with deep-rooted knowledge in what we do. And the way that we sell is through educating on the process and providing information to our sellers. And that does not need to start the day that we list the business. That's really what it comes down to.
It does. And you're right, Carey. A couple times a year, I talk to a seller that they're ready to sell right now. And I review their financials and I talk to them and I'm like, I think you should hold on for another year and do this and do that. Or sometimes it's just like the one that comes to mind last year, it was, they approached me last year. They said, hey, I want to sell my business. We want to retire. They want to move on. We want to get out as soon as possible. I looked at their financials. They were killing it last year. And I said, do you think that you're going to finish off the year like this? And they said, yeah. And so I did the broker's opinion of value and I came back to them and said, hey,
you got to wait.
If you waited, this is how much you would get if we sold it right now. If you did nothing and you just let the business continue how it is going this year, you're going to get, and it was almost 30% more for your business if you waited a year and you got through the 2024 year. And so we sold it in 2025 and they said, yeah, we're going to hold off. That's a lot of money. It'll really help us in retirement. And we held off. We are not, that's how I always look at it. If I think that the seller, by just waiting and making some easy fixes and easy changes, could greatly increase the value of their business and get them better terms, I'm going to tell them that.
Yeah. I'm doing the same thing right now with the business. I actually signed the listing agreement with them, but we're not going to market until at earliest February. And we're going to spend the last 4 months of this year, prepping, doing all the stuff that we can do to get the package together. the amount of stuff that they have under contract, we know they're going to have their best year financially. So I said, finish the year, file that tax return, get your nice organized audited financials and everything. And we'll have everything ready that as soon as that report comes in, which we'll still keep track of on a monthly basis.
Yep.
We'll hit a button and we'll go live, and you are going to get so much more money. So, I wanted the commitment that they're working with me. They're going to get a sell side Q of E light while we're waiting during this time. So they're doing everything properly the right way.
That's
which
really
is
good. They're spending that money. Yeah. That's kudos to them.
So I look forward to following up on this particular business and talking about it. But just like you were, our goal is to get the highest price and best terms for our seller, which includes if we delay our commission or us getting paid. Because at the end of the day, for us, if we do the right thing and advise properly, that's why our reputation is what it is, Jim. Yeah. That's why Boss Group is what it is. That's why Jim Parker, Carey, Sobel, our other partners. It's a good reputation because we are here to build a relationship. There's not a lot of business brokers in the country. There really isn't. And then if you take all of them and find out how many of them are good, and by good, it's like, are they good? They perform? Are they good humans? Like, we can stand in the mirror, look at ourselves every day and say, yeah, we're good at what we do. We're good people. So it's going to come back around. I would rather have a success story for a seller and getting maximum value in terms, knowing that they're going to then be a advocate for us, than I would just try to push a commission to get $1 in my pocket.
And I agree. And it's still kind of a hard conversation when you do tell those sellers, hey, even though you can get 30% more if you wait a year. I mean, here you are, you're talking to somebody that's like had the business for 30, 40 years and they're ready to retire. They're ready to get their RV. They're ready to go see the grandkids and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh yeah, you're not going to be out by X amount of time. You're going to have to wait a year. It's still a difficult conversation. And that is what this program today is about, is trying to convince business owners that reach out. I mean, obviously we want them to reach out to us, but reach out to a good quality business broker a couple years before you're ready to sell, so that you have more control over when your departure date is.
Yep. And on that point, since again, topic is when is the right time to sell my business? Let's role play a little bit. We're going to do some challenge statement stuff. We've done this before on here.
I'm in trouble.
So you're sitting in a room of business owners and you're telling them, start the planning now. And why shouldn't you sell right now? Here are going to be the rebuttals. Number one, I'll wait until my business has its best year ever. We already addressed that, right?
What's the best year ever? I don't know.
Well, buyers don't pay a premium for a single good year. They pay for trends. So if 25 was your best year, but 26 and 27 are now going to go down, you just waited and chased something because your reasoning was until I get my best year ever.
Or on that same note, Carey, I hear this too. Oh, I just signed this one big contract. It's a one-time thing and it's a $400,000 contract. So my numbers are going to be really high. That's a one-time instance. Buyers aren't going to buy into that anyways. You know what I mean? If it's not going to be a repeatable type of a situation, it doesn't matter.
How about challenge statement? I don't need to sell now. I don't need to look at the market. The market's always the same. The reality is that the business sales market moves in cycles. Yeah. Interest rates, lending environments, buyer activity. So, the takeaway is that you can't control the market, but you can control your position in the market.
I just don't think that I don't think you try to play the market.
No,
nobody can predict the market. If you can predict the market, if the business owner can predict the market,
we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't be here. No. We'd be major investors and worth billion. We'd be billionaires.
We'd be on an island somewhere.
Yeah. Like it's very hard to predict the market. You just don't want to do that. I mean, it goes back to, are you personally ready to sell, or are you getting to the point where you're feeling that burnout coming in and you need to start getting ready to sell? I just don't think you try to play the market. No. I mean, obviously, if we were in a situation that, all of a sudden the economy for some reason just went to the toilet, it might be a different situation.
Yeah.
But
how about this challenge statement? I don't think it's the right time to sell my business. My kids are going to take over the business.
I would be asking, how old are the kids? And I say, I can't tell you how many times I've had business owners say, yeah, I'm going to give it to my kids or sell it to my kids, and they don't do it.
That's the point.
I had a business a few years ago, Carey, that we had it under contract with a buyer, and the buyer needed a little bit more time for due diligence. And we were getting close to closing, and the buyer had really, they should have moved quicker. It
Yeah.
wasn't the seller's fault. The buyer was dragging their feet, and the buyer came back and said, I want to do a little bit more due diligence. But we were pretty close to finishing the deal. And so, normally I think, sellers are going to go ahead and, hey, let's just extend it 2 more weeks. And they were like, no, don't want to do it. Turned out, yeah, that when that deal fell apart, their idea was that, yeah, their kids wanted to buy the business. Well, I ended up getting a call from them about a year and a half later, and they're like, "Yeah,
Didn't work
it
out.
didn't work out. We're going to sell the business." And I don't know.
It's a tough one, but here's my,
Most kids do not want to follow their parents' footsteps. No offense, they can love their parents, but we're all individuals. We all have our own idea of what we want out of life and what our goals are and what our passions are. And that was your goal, that was your passion.
Yeah.
That's probably not the passion of your kid, and that's okay.
I think that if there's a piece of advice I would give against somebody saying that, I would say somebody saying that I'll define as I'm going to sell the business to my kids. Is I think that if there is a family transition planned, every business owner that is planning to sell to their kids should also entertain the idea of having an outside buyer. They should plan for an outside buyer. Even if it's a contingency plan,
Yeah, I agree.
you should still plan for an outside buyer. Here's a couple of reasons why. One, understand what an outside buyer would pay for the business to see what type of discount you're going to offer if you are offering a discount.
Yep.
Number two, and probably most importantly, children are younger, kids are younger. Maybe they're in their 30s, 40s when they're taking over, but still, they might have a change of heart. They may see what their parents did or their father
what they
did,
went through.
what they went through and the stress and whatnot. And maybe it was their plans always to do that. And then they met their spouse who wants to move across country. And
they're having kids, and their mindset is more of like, hey, I want to work more of a 9 to 5 and not think of work outside. And I saw what my kids went through. I mean,
just
Carey,
have a contingency plan. Options create leverage.
Absolutely. And Carey, at the end of the day, I think it's fantastic. I think it's awesome when a kid or kids take over the family business. I don't think there could be anything more special in the world. The parents spend years and sometimes decades building this business up. They do a great job at it. It's running really well. It's making good money, and I think it's fantastic when you can take that and your kids can take it over. And I think that's wonderful. But you really have to look at your kids. First of all, do you see them actually, their personalities fitting into that?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have the capability of actually running the business? Because sometimes I've sold businesses where the parents own the business and their kid works in the business, and they're like, yeah, they're a really good mechanic. They're a fantastic mechanic, but they're not going to be very good on the business end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you got to keep that in mind, because you don't want to put that your kid into a situation where they're not going to be able to handle the business. I mean, for a lot of these business owners, they struggled really bad up front. And then you have a kid take it over that's kind of taking it over more because they feel obligated. Their parents have been saying it for years, and they take over the business, and the business starts to not do very well because they're not able to operate it in the same manner the parents are able to operate it in.
Yeah.
You're putting a ton of stress and pressure on them, as well as the emotional effect that they're getting. Like, I'm a failure. I'm ruining my parents' business. And what it just comes down to, they just don't have the same passion or love for the business or the same ability.
And there's so many tools that you can use to kind of check that. I mean, I think in any situation, you still have the contingency plan to sell to an outside buyer. But as I was hearing you talk about that, I was thinking about this book that I love called The E-Myth Revisited. And E-Myth Revisited.
I have not heard that. I've heard the
E-Myth.
E-Myth. I've read the E-Myth. I love
It's
that.
just
And then
an
there was a second E-Myth book. Was that the third one?
I think the Revisit is just updating it to like today's scenarios, but
Okay.
it kind of talks about, the mechanic and then the manager and then the entrepreneur,
Great
or the
book.
technician. So, if you're trying to turn a technician into an entrepreneur, it may not be possible. If you're trying to turn a manager into an entrepreneur, it may not be possible. People have certain genetic makeup on what they're good and not good at. But the point that you made that I loved was a lot of business owners, especially blue collars that are probably boomers right now, they were the technician, had to become the manager, and then maybe they became an entrepreneur. They're still kind of in that manager standpoint, but like, a family transition, when there's different makeups on that, like I can relate a lot to that book. And then there's another framework called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman.
Oh, I've heard about that book.
I use Traction in one of my businesses. I'm a big advocate of it. I went through it, but there's one exercise in there called GWC. It's gets it, wants it, can achieve it. So we analyzed in my previous business, every one of our employees of GWC. Do they check all the boxes? If not, they might be in the wrong seat. So maybe that person who's working in the business, and it's a great mechanic, gets it. They understand the business, right?
Yep.
Let's say can achieve it. Yeah, they have went to business school. They also understand that they could run the business, but maybe they don't want it.
Right.
So gets it once it can achieve it. If all three boxes aren't checked, that family transition ain't happening. It's forced then, like you said, or somebody feels like they need to step into.
And maybe it does. Maybe all those three are checked, and they're perfect fit. And you know what? That's part of exit planning. Now you're exit planning for the kid. The kid wants it. They're going to be good at it. They're going to be able to take it to the next level. Now spend the next few years training them on how to operate the business. Take them out of being the mechanic and get them into the front, make them a service writer, and then make them a, office manager or whatever it is. Show them how you're doing the books and, whatever it is, But we're talking about exit planning today. And if your exit is that your kids are going to take over your business, make sure that your kids want the business, they're capable of operating the business, and put them in the position over the next couple of years, teach them.
And then
have them take the necessary classes, make them better than you.
Yeah. You'll know when the time is right if you take those steps. If topic being when is the right time to sell my business? If it's going to be when is the right time to sell my business to my kids, story's the same.
Yeah.
You're doing the same stuff. So
I don't get involved with transfers business, like that. But I don't. But I love when I do hear my kids are taking it over.
Yeah.
And then, there's a couple of people I talked to after that, and they're doing kids are doing really well. And I'm like, to me, that's really special.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often. It doesn't.
And I had two more challenge statements on this, but I'm going to kind of combine them into one. You're sitting there and telling people, hey, have you considered selling? And the response is either I'll sell when I'm ready to retire, or I'll sell when I know the time is right.
As far as ready to retire, I think I'm probably not going to answer your question like you want me to answer the question.
That's okay.
Carey.
That's the point of this.
But this is how I feel. I feel like as you get older, I'm not going to say old because I'll never be old, but as I get older and as people get older, you need to start thinking about the next chapter of your life. I think it's really scary to sell your business or to we're talking about business owners, so I'm not going to say, end your career, to sell your business and wake up the next day and be like, after training and being like, oh, okay, now what am I going to do? I think you need to already start planning a couple years in advance mentally what you want to do upon retirement. You need to, think a couple years in advance, not only think about what you want to do in retirement, but start doing some of those activities. Hey, I want to start doing pottery, or I want to go, I want to go to the gun range more. I want to go golfing more, blah, 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 blah. Start doing that now. Mm-hmm. Start cutting back on your hours a little bit. Start doing that now. See if you really want it. Because when you make that transition, you want to be in a point where you're not waking up and going, oh, okay, what am I going to do now? I have nothing to do. And you're sitting around watching TV all day crazy. And your body's rotting. Your mind is rotting. And you're going to be dead 10 years later. Whereas if you go in with a nice, healthy aspect of, hey, this is going to be the third part of my life. The first part was growing up. The second part was career and family. The third part is about me and my spouse. And we're going to embrace that life for everything that we've got. This is what we're going to do. And you're active mentally, socially, and physically. You do the right thing. It's I think it's the best time of your life.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, this is the end of my life and I'm sitting in a rocking chair waiting to pass. So this is the most exciting because you know what? When you're younger in that first third of your life, it's all about having fun. It's out when you're a kid, it's going out there in the summers and playing and doing all this stuff. And, in college, it might be about partying, but that first third is about having fun. The second part is a lot of responsibility with family and career, and you love it. And it's a passionate point, and you have money. The third part is you've got the first part with hey, I can have a lot of fun. And you got the second part, I've got the money to do so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it should be very rewarding.
That third part of your life is something should be embraced, but you need to be thinking about that a couple years in advance and what that's going to look like.
That was the key takeaway from this challenge statement. Was the best time.
Do I get a star on the refrigerator?
You do. Okay, it was that the best time to sell is before you're ready. But when we was talking about, I want to sell when I retire, it's, do you have the energy to sell and transition then, like we talked about before? And typically, like, your best years may not be when you're ready to retire, right? Like, financially speaking. So buyers aren't paying for history. They're paying for what the business is doing now and what it should be doing in the future. So if you're like, I'll sell when I'm ready to retire, does your retirement time plan line up personally when you want to retire with how the business is doing?
Yeah.
That's pretty damn hard to time.
Right.
So the whole takeaway of that was just, don't sell when you're ready to retire. Plan your sale now, so whenever you do decide that you want to retire, you could sell.
And I do think you have to wait until you're really ready to sell.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not pushing anybody. You got to sell now. You got to sell now. You got to be ready mentally to sell. And, you know, you might be planning on, hey, I'm going to retire at 62. And you might get to 62 and go, hey, I'm not ready to do it yet. I'm still having fun. I'm enjoying it. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, just in closing, there is no right time to sell that we could put our finger on right now and cover it as a blanket statement. However, there are so many different indicators, and there are so many different patterns, and there are so many different things that should trigger a business owner to start the process to help them know when the time is right.
And they'll know when the time is ready.
Yeah.
Right. Just make sure that your business is ready before you know it's time right to sell, because I don't want you to be calling us. It's okay. It's okay, because it happens all the time. I'm not coming down on anybody, but you don't want to be like, okay, I'm ready to sell. And then you talk to us and you're like, yeah, actually your business is 2 or 3 years away.
Yeah.
You know, I hate those conversations.
Yeah. So if there's one takeaway that we can give to our listeners or viewers, it's that there is no right or perfect time to sell your business, but pay attention to the patterns, pay attention to the indicators. But more so than anything, our advice is start the process now. Whether you're ready to sell now, whether you're ready to sell in a couple of years, or whether you know you don't want to sell for a decade. Start the process now so you can at least understand what's going to help you get this whole journey done in a more efficient and profitable manner for you down the road. Thank you so much for tuning into Boss Talk. My name is Carey Sobel. This is my partner, Jim Parker, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.